Hey, welcome into the Husker247 Podcast. I'm Mike Schaefer, joined by Michael Bruntz, Brian Christopherson. You get all of us here on the Husker247 Podcast, and that's good because we all have something to offer. Right, guys?
Oh, I wouldn't go that far, but yeah. That's nice of you to say, though.
Well, I mean, you provide the strong reporting that just allows me to sit off to the side and crack jokes and do very little. So I feel like you do quite a lot, Brian.
Oh, well, that's kind of you.
Bruns keeps the train on the tracks and
Yeah.
keeps our schedule and keeps so you and I don't have to.
He gives
to
us
do
our
the
wake
adult
up call. Wake
Yeah.
up call at 6:30 a.m. every morning. That's very nice of Brunson. He's always on time.
Yeah, and I am just always available to talk on camera. That's largely what I bring to the table here. So that's what we got here for Husker 24/7 broken down. Bruns, is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that works. I like it. Sorry, I'll join you in a second.
In this entire podcast.
Brunson's distracted.
He's going to be in the upper right corner. We'll see if he talks today, folks.
I'm just holding a square.
So BC, Nebraska's coaches talked on Tuesday, as I think about the Hollywood Squares game now. But they talked on Tuesday. What did we learn from Dana Holgorsen, and what are we kind of making Nebraska's offense as they get deeper into Big Ten play?
I guess the first thing is he thought they had a great week of practice. I know people don't like hearing that since the Frost era. You're not supposed to bring that up, but he did really think they got after it with their 1v1s on Tuesday and Wednesday last week during the bye. Players echoed that sentiment. So there was this feeling, I guess you would take from Tuesday's press conference, that morale had built back up after the painful loss to Michigan. In fact, right after in the locker room, Dylan Raiola said guys weren't pointing fingers or saying it's you or this. It was a very much a group that latched onto each other. So we'll see if that pays off going into Saturday. He did not give away who the number 2 running back is or what the exact tackle situation. He just said about the backs, basically, you're going to see something different that you haven't seen before. Was that right, Bronx? Would you say that's
yeah, no,
right?
It's going to be a big reveal.
Yeah.
It's like yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's like Capone's vault at this point. Like who's back there?
Like a gender reveal. They should have like a different color for each back that shoots out of a cannon or something.
Brunson's references are not going to hit well with Gen Z, but they're working for me today. So I appreciate it. So like
we had Geraldo out there.
Hey, Brian, if you had to guess,
who's Geraldo?
This is just a guess. What do you think they do with the tackle situation? Do you think it's just status quo? Do you think you'll see Gunnar Gatula on the left, Teddy Prohaska on the right? Do you think Elijah Pritchett comes in on the left and Teddy Prohaska on the right? Pritchett on the left and Gunnar Gatula on the right. Tyler Kanak coming from way out back to steal the job. Turner Corcoran just stepping into the role as we're about to talk about Michigan State. And I've got a great photo of Turner Corcoran embracing a Nebraska recruiting staffer in the snow after the big win in 2018 against Michigan State. What's going to happen up front there?
And bet your mortgage, please.
Just a guess. I'll say Pritchett left, Gatula right. That's my guess.
So their best 5 linemen then.
Well, we'll see. I mean, Pritchett's got to prove it if he gets that call. And again, that's a guess. I don't say that with certainty, but if he does step into that left tackle role, we've heard enough from Rule to think that a flip of Gatula to the other side is definitely in play. He's brought it up multiple times. And he also at one point said of Gunnar Gatula, it was just basically a question of where he would start on the line, that he was one of the 5. And so somehow, some way, I expect Gunnar Gatula to be out there, whether it's left or right. Maybe I'm going to be surprised on that, but that's my guess. What do you guys say?
I have been campaigning for the Pritchett on the left, Gatula on the right since roughly the first day of fall camp. So,
you have. You've been.
We'll see if Nebraska decides to go in that route. I mean, I'm not saying that's going to fix everything that ails you, but I think it gets your 5 highest upside offensive linemen at this point in their careers out there. I think it would help you on the right side. I respect what Teddy Prohaska has gone through, and you know, it's unfortunate to have as many injuries as he has had that has derailed his career. I just don't think that he's good enough to be your right tackle. I really don't. I was surprised when they went forward with him, and he might be the starting tackle again against Michigan State, and he might finish out his year strong and all of that. And I could be completely and utterly wrong. I just haven't seen it on the football field. I didn't see it in August when we were at the open practice. I haven't seen it during games so far this year. I mean, he's just not the same guy that was stonewalling Aiden Hutchinson back in 2021. And so it's unfortunate because he's a great guy and you know how much it means to him. But at some point, you got to get your best 5 offensive linemen out there. And there's no way Elijah Pritchett isn't one of those. Even with all the other issues, he's still one of your best linemen. And at some point, that needs to matter. What do you think, bro?
I think you're at the point now where you accept whatever issue, pre-snap issues are there. Like if it gives you more in the running game and it allows you to protect Dylan more. I mean, I think that's, and I think going back to the August when Matt Rule said that about the being willing to flip guys. I mean, I think that was the flip that they had in mind was one of the 2 guys who was on the left side flipping over to the right side. So I don't know. I mean, that feels like probably the favorite scenario to me right now that BC laid out, but you know, we'll see. I mean, I just think you just got to you got to pick. You know, you're at the point, especially running back too. You're 4 games into this. You just need to start moving forward with some kind of scenario, whatever that is, and just, you know, trusting whoever's out there. So I would lean both of those guys being out there together.
Is there any possibility that what Dana Holgerson was getting at was actually Nebraska playing with an unbalanced front like they did under Mark Whipple, and then they bring in Turner Corcoran, and then they just have like a heavy load that they can run Emmett Johnson behind? Could that be something?
I mean, it could be. It's something. It's definitely something.
Hey, it's just throwing stuff at the wall season right now.
Yeah. No, I was just imagining that picture that always ends up on our message board of Mark Whipple like posing at Fan Day, and
table.
It warms my heart.
He loved him an unbalanced offensive line.
He did. He coached Ben Roethlisberger.
Bruns took the best picture of Mark Whipple that it should be like in the Whipple house. You took that photo of him his last game after they beat Iowa.
Oh yeah, it's him looking out on the celebrating Nebraska players after they won the Heroes Trophy. Yeah,
it was artistic. It was beautiful.
Yep.
Yeah. I guess to the O-line as a whole, I'm skeptical now more, but I have an open mind going into October, especially if it's a new look. But it's based off the idea. I do think Michigan's front and their pass rush could be really good, like Barham and like what they've found and sort of unlocked up in Ann Arbor. I wouldn't be surprised if that's a defense that gives a lot of people trouble throughout the rest of the year. So I've kind of kept that in mind the last 2 weeks as I've tried to come to my thoughts on the Husker O-line, because it was a disappointment, no doubt, what we saw a couple weeks ago for what's supposed to be the strength. But I'm going to give them this chance to like swing back, as they've been saying, and see what they do against, I think, fronts and defenses that are going to be good, but maybe not quite as good as what they played against a couple weeks ago.
I think you could say the same thing with Nebraska's defensive line. And I'm curious what John Butler had to say. That's a group that has been kind of picked apart over the last few weeks coming off of facing Michigan. But I don't know that there's a lot of Justice Haynes level home run threats on Nebraska's schedule. Now, that doesn't mean that they can get away with the poor run fits. But I'm not as worried about a team doing to Michigan or doing to Nebraska what Michigan did as much. What did John Butler have to say about how they handled their bye week? And are there any changes on the horizon for the front seven or Nebraska in general defensively?
he referred to the big plays in the run game as the elephant in the room, and said Captain Obvious could figure out what needs to be fixed there, which I appreciated his bluntness.
What was Captain Obvious then? Because I think a fair amount of people have different thoughts on how things went for them in that on the big run.
He was referring more broadly to just giving up big plays in the run game.
Gotcha.
Statistically, like that's just a boat anchor right now for them.
I was hoping he would just come out and say that they had really bad run fits, so we could, eliminate some of the idea that the defensive line themselves were the reasons that they had the 75-yard runs.
Yeah, no, he talked about that too. But no, I think, I don't know that there's any like big personnel changes coming. I mean, I think you also have to at least allow the thought that perhaps Nebraska, with a very young young defensive line, it is at least going to improve gradually through the year. Like a guy like Williams Nwaneri, I think, has been better with each passing game. For a group that has Elijah Judy, who has never been in the role that he's been thrown into, Riley Van Poppel, who is playing more snaps than he ever has in his career, Gabe Moore, who's never played in college football, Cade Petchock, who's never played in college football. I mean, basically, it's Cam Lenhart and Keona Davis is relatively new. Like, I think there's at least a world where that group is going to continue to improve by just playing. Like, I think that's out there. The fits were bad. They were not done any favors by the linebackers or safeties just missing tackles. But they got to get off blocks. Like that's the thing that was pretty obvious during the game. If you rewatch that Michigan game at all, I think at one point, Schaefer, I leaned over to you and said it was like a middle school dance. Like everybody was paired up. There was a little bit of space between everybody, but nobody was really moving. And so I think that's what you got to figure out is you just got to get in there and you got to make plays and win one-on-one battles. And I think there's potential for that to happen just based on the fact that you've got guys that are still relatively new to all this.
Yeah, I think the only thing missing was either Aerosmith's I Don't Want to Miss a Thing blasting, or if it wasn't a slow song, maybe you get Shaggy Wasn't Me going. I think that kind of hits the middle school dance theme there.
Yeah. You need a little more bumping and grinding and a little less slow dancing out there, I think, is what we need to see.
Well, we have our title for the episode now. BC, what'd you get from John Butler?
No, Bruns hit it pretty well. I mean, he said run defense.
Which part?
No, but
the middle school dance, obviously.
The bumping and grinding. You want to see more of that? Okay.
Yeah, basically, let's emphasize that. You got to get off blocks and you got to tackle better. If you wanted to sum it up, that's what he said. And he basically run defense is an attitude. Pass defense can be more scheme, grease board oriented. But they've got to get more hats to the ball. If we want to use some coach jargon, I do think the backers have to play better. I think, like Shavers has graded out very well. Like if you're into the PFF stuff, and I think has made some tremendous plays. Like maybe they don't win the Cincinnati game if he doesn't, force the fumble. He tracks down Justice Hayes on that one screen pass that would have went.
Man, that play was so good.
Yeah,
that play was so like rewatching that. In the moment, you knew it was important. I don't know that I understood how much space was in front of him on the field. In the moment of that tackle, it was like, okay, Nebraska got off the field, great individual play. Rewatching it, wow, that was so important. And they didn't make enough of those against Michigan.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
No, that's all right. I mean, you see the upside of Shavers, like it's there. But they do have to hit their run fits, I think, more consistently. I think that's as big a deal as the D line. Like there's no question the D line isn't getting the pushback they want. Like you're not seeing the disruptive plays. They only have 24 TFLs right now, which ranks very low comparatively nationwide. But more than anything, that second and third levels got to hit their gaps, take good angles, tackle well, because with this growing D line, you can live with if occasionally they get you and they get 7 yards off of it. But it's when your second and third level aren't up for it either, and ends up being what we saw, the 75-yard and all that. If you take away those 3 runs, this is how painful those were. Of course, it cost Nebraska the game. Also, statistically, I looked at the numbers. Nebraska would be averaging giving up 4.0 yards per rush if those 3 plays didn't exist, and it's 5.1 or 5.2 because of those runs. So not only was it a killer in the win-loss column, which matters the most, but statistically, it's why they're in the hundreds right now in rush defense.
Even if those runs existed, but they were like 12-yard runs or 16-yard runs or, whatever, it's just such a massive, stark difference of when you give up an explosive play, if it's limited to 22 yards versus 70 some. It's just a huge, it changes the outlook of everything, let alone the points.
One of the strangest stats I've ever seen is connected to this defense right now, where you've given up 6 explosives, 20 yards or more running the ball, none passing. I mean, that's bizarre in the year 2025 that would be the deal. So they're like 88th, like in allowed explosives in the run game, but they're second nationally in just explosives periods because they haven't given up 1 pass beyond, 18 yards, which is amazing. So it's going to be interesting, mostly to me, what personnel they come out with on defense. Like, I expect the veterans to play, but Rex Guthrie played like 39 snaps or something in that game. I'm curious if Dawson Merritt, who we all feel has been picking up steam since camp, fits more into the linebacker equation. So stuff like that's going to be really interesting.
There's like a number of delightfully stupid stats right now with Nebraska. Like, Nebraska's a top 15 defense, and I believe they're like 110th in run defense. Like,
how does that happen? Yeah.
Well, when you have like teams are averaging less than 100 yards passing against you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I understand it, but it's still like in the time and place in football, it's like, man, it doesn't compute almost.
Just imagine Kirk Cignetti looking at that stat ahead of playing Nebraska, being like, "Oh, yeah, that's what it looks like now. We'll see what it looks like on Sunday." All right, let's transition here. Let's get into Nebraska, Michigan State. That'll be happening on Saturday. And this is a series where, since Nebraska has joined the Big Ten, because famously, I believe it was Tom Osborne, beat a Nick Saban coached Michigan State team. Was Tony Banks the quarterback of Michigan State during that? And then I want to say that was like 96. Is that right?
95.
95. Okay. So it was during the title run. And I should have known that it was 95 because I want to say Lawrence Phillips he wouldn't have played in that game.
No,
Did Amon Green have the big day?
It was the LP game before crap hit the fan.
Okay. But somebody had a monster game in that one, I want to say.
Lawrence did.
I'm going entirely off the recollection of watching the that would have been Decade of Dominance. That's my frame of reference because I can't claim to remember everything from watching it on our 24-inch television, but I can remember the Decade of Dominance. So that's my frame of reference from that Michigan State game. But jumping from there to Nebraska playing as part of the Big Ten, this has been one of my favorite opponents that Nebraska has gone against because almost every game is memorable to some degree, starting with the very first one, which has the biggest margin of victory, I think, in any game in this series. And since they've been in the Big Ten, with Nebraska taking on a Kirk Cousins-led Michigan State team that was ranked coming to Lincoln, and he wasn't prepared for Lance Thurell and what the Huskers could do defensively, as Thurell had a pick six. And that was pretty much like the one sort of highlight I remember from the 2011 game. Is there anything else you guys got?
I remember Rex Burkhead gutting it out. Was dealing with cramps or something. He caught a touchdown pass that I think made it 24-3. But yeah, it was a defensive dominating performance by Bo Pelini. Like, they were in Michigan State's playbook. I think it was like they knew what they're going to run before it happened. Almost, it felt like that game.
That's like a sneaky, like, comfortable win over a ranked opponent. Like, as I can remember in like the Big Ten era, where it was like
it never felt like it was in doubt.
No, like you would not have probably assumed that Michigan State was the ranked team based on how that game played out. And they had some dudes on defense on that team too. Like I remember some of those early like Big Ten era Michigan State teams, and you'd be down on the sidelines during warmups, and you're like, this looks like an SEC defense with the way that some of those guys were.
These are Mark D'Antonio, like they were just really big up front,
just rangy corners.
Yeah. I want to say after that game, spirits were really high, and then Nebraska took on Kane Coulter and Northwestern at home, and immediately stubbed their toe. So
Dan Vitale.
As would be a theme that would sort of plague them against Northwestern, it seems. We'll move into 2012, which is my all-time favorite game that I have ever covered. There's a lot that goes into this. It has absolutely nothing to do with the game at all, including my state of mind going into the press box that day. But Nebraska played just an insane game here, like absolutely insane, where we saw every facet of the Taylor Martinez experience, from the mind-numbingly bad interception that gets returned for a pick six by Alfonso Dennard's cousin, I believe. The horrible, just like kind of sinking feeling that Nebraska is letting this game get away from them against a Michigan State team that they should have been beating. And then all of a sudden they sort of turn it on. And then Martinez has these outstanding runs. He leads the game-winning drive. There's a touchdown pass to Jamal Turner where looking back on it, could have just allowed myself to be run over and been part of a viral moment for years to come. Just an outstanding football game. One of my favorites that I just remember really well, remember very clearly. And I'm curious what stands out when you guys think about that game.
Well, you mentioned the interception. He might have had one earlier too that returned. One of them got called back. Like Michigan State still got the pick. It was when it was 24-14, and they had like a cheap like block in the back or something, and it erased the guy's touchdown actually. And had they not thrown that flag, I don't think the comeback would have ever happened. But it was the full Taylor experience, including my favorite play almost of all time in football, where he fumbles the ball on his own like 35 and actually picks it up in stride as he's running forward. And if a guy hadn't just barely tripped his shoelaces, I think he would have made a house call on that one from like 70 yards. On the last drive, I remember D'Antonio kept calling timeouts before offensive plays, including a fourth down conversion to Kyler Reed that sort of got him down near the red zone. I remember the Husker band was in the corner on the field. That was like one of those stadiums where that was a setup, and the drum major, who was a really nice guy, met at the Oven a few years later, is like jumping up and down as Kyler Reed is running. And so, yeah, that game was a classic. That was back when Nebraska was winning close games left and right. And I guess
2012 as a season.
Yeah, the payment would come later for that.
Taylor Martinez had 205 rush yards in that game. 205.
So it's not my favorite Taylor run ever, but it's up there. There's like this play, and I struggle to describe it, but it's like he got shot out of a cannon, and he sort of like fakes a pitch and then just takes off with a keeper. And it's honestly one of the fastest I think he's ever run. And then the Michigan State defender, who's the last line of defense, just sort of like lays out like he's a goalkeeper trying to stop a penalty shot, but he barely moves. And Taylor just breezes right by him for the touchdown. I think that was the one that pulled it to 24-21. And then the Jamal Turner would come later. But just a tremendous game. Also, I think it was the classic 2:30 start at home, 3:30 start on the road. So you get kind of the late afternoon in the fall, and then it turns into the evening, and then it's kind of chilly a little bit. Like just a classic environment, and I think an underrated stadium where I've enjoyed Nebraska playing at. They've had some good games out in East Lansing, including one that a couple that we'll get to later on the list that maybe aren't as viewed as fondly by Nebraska fans. 2013, I remember this as the Terrell Newby losing the pitch in the Sun game. Also, Connor Cook with the big third down conversion as well. Anything else stand out to you from this? Nebraska famously, if they won that game, would have controlled their own destiny to winning the division and would have had the opportunity to play. Would that have been Ohio State under Urban Meyer at that point? Yeah, it would have been.
Yeah, that was a crazy game. Nebraska also nearly, I think it was Stanley Jean Baptiste almost had a pick like in Michigan State territory, but they reviewed it and the ball at the ground. It would have been a big play. That was right. That was a week after Nebraska went to the Big House, I'm pretty sure, and beat Michigan when Abdullah jumped into the end zone. And that was just such a weird season because that was the audio tape season. Bo, like, what's going to happen with that? It didn't feel like a real steady team. And then all of a sudden there was this game in Lincoln that presented the opportunity, as you put it well, Schaefer, to like win the division and to have a kind of a year that's like, okay, that turned out pretty well. And they were always just like a third down stop away and they could never get it.
Yeah, I think that's a great what if. If Nebraska wins that, do they still get demolished by Bo Pelini? Or not Bo Pelini. Do they get demolished by Iowa? Bo Pelini swings the hat at the official, tells basically Sean Eichhorst through the media, if you're going to fire him, fire him. You get all of that comes out of, if they beat Michigan State, who knows? Plus, we never get the famous, I know this would hurt Brunts, you would never get the famous Urban Meyer Papa John's pizza after the loss in that conference championship game. So
it was the picture that launched 1,000 memes.
Yeah, I mean, so that would have been quite a loss. Would have been quite a loss. All right, 2014. This is a Nebraska rolling at this point. They had beat Miami. They're going in. They're playing a Michigan State team that was top 10 in the country, I believe, on the road in East Lansing. And famous things from this game: Bo Pelini elected to punt from the Michigan State 28-yard line. They punted for a touchback, so they got a net of 8 yards there on that one after recovering a fumble early in the game. I think Randy Gregory was outstanding in this one, if I recall correctly. DeMornay Pearsonell had a big punt return that set up the opportunity for Nebraska to try to win this one late. Alonzo Moore not able to corral the pass down the sidelines. Close loss for the Huskers. And probably the last time people felt great in the Bo Pelini era was going into that game. And then after that, they won games and then they got absolutely stomped by Wisconsin. And that was the end of everything.
They got stomped in most of this game too. It was 27-3 in the fourth quarter. And most of the student section cleared out of the stadium. And these weird plays kept happening. Like it was like 27-9, and Armstrong threw a gift pick 6 to them that they just dropped. And then there was a weird play. You might remember that where it was another bad throw. Actually, it was the same play I'm talking about. It went through the guy's hand. Should have been a pick 6. Westerkamp catches it, goes down to like the red zone, and they score, and it's 27-16. And suddenly get a stop, and then they kicked to Pearsonell, and it was like, holy crap, this could be like the greatest comeback Nebraska's ever had. And Alonzo Moore has that like ball on his one hand. I don't know. It would have been reviewed if he got in or not, or if he had his knee in, but it would have been one of the great Husker catches. And honestly, one of the most unlikely wins of all time had they pulled it off.
Yeah. I want to say, and this might be, Brunts might have the memory on this. I want to say this is the famous false start from Jake Cotton falling over play.
Yeah, night game. That's right.
He was leaning real hard on that one, and that's kind of when he went. That's when he went timber. So we go from 2014 to 2015. Mike Riley's the coach now. Nebraska hosts a undefeated top 10 Michigan State team. Michigan State was really good at one point in time in the mid 2010s, I should point out. Undefeated Michigan State team that would eventually play in the college football playoff, but the Huskers got them at home that night. That is the let me clear my throat celebration game where everybody went nuts afterwards. Nebraska held on for the win. Brandon Riley had the big touchdown catch. What else stands out from that one? You guys think back on it. Brunts?
I remember, well, just the improbability of that last catch. Like, it felt like the way that year had gone, that it was like there was no way that call was going to go in Nebraska's favor. And, I mean, it did. Whether it was the correct call or not, it did.
Jamel Hill still very upset.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Like, that game itself is kind of a bit of a black hole in my mind, aside from, like, that last quarter. In that last play, because I remember thinking, like, there's no way. Like, this is not the kind of thing that typically goes Nebraska's way, and it did.
BC?
Yeah, Nebraska was actually down 38-26, and Michigan State really couldn't stop the Husker passing game at the end. Like they went like 9 before the Brandon Riley debated touchdown. That was like a 90-some yard drive in like less than a minute, to go take the lead. And then it still got dicey. Michigan State got around midfield and the clock ran out. And if people want some inside baseball, before the game, Sean Eichhorst had like 5 or 6 media people that he designated to talk about the state of the program. Cause they were like 2-5 or something at that point in Riley's first year, something like that. And basically was laying out, hey, things are going in the right direction, guys. It was a tough deal. This was all the problems that were there before this, and does this thing with the media. And then it worked out well for him because they get this win. And so it kind of did for a while. They had some momentum to end the year then. They beat UCLA in that Foster Farms Bowl. And
Well, they beat Rutgers. They should have
yep.
beat Iowa in that game at home. Undefeated Iowa was in Lincoln 2015, and that was the Tommy Armstrong pick 6 game. They had a great chance to beat that Iowa team. They didn't get it done. Which weird, imagine saying that phrase.
Yeah.
So anything else on 2015?
Not from me.
2018 snow game, 9-6. Nebraska wins on 3 field goals. Do you remember who the kicker was that day, Brunts?
Barrett Pickering was doing the kickering. And if you remember, all 3 field goals came in the fourth quarter of that game.
They're all like wobbly, barely clearing the crossbar into that. I want to say it was South Stadium. Is that right?
I believe so. But yeah, he 36, 20 yards, and the last one was a 47-yarder after a 6-play drive that went 23 yards. And so, yeah, that was the game where it felt like, okay, it felt big in the moment, right? Like with the way that the year had played out, you won a tough one at home, and things were trending in the right direction, and they were not at all. Michigan State started Rocky Lombardi that day. I'm just going through the box score. There's some names here.
Do you remember Maurice Washington had the really big hurdle that was in that game as well? Every time I say his name, I'm like, oh yeah, that guy played for Nebraska for a little bit.
Three carries for 19 yards from Maurice Washington that day. Not a lot to write home about. Nebraska fumbled 5 times in that game, lost 2 of them. But yeah,
Antonio Reed played the game of his life on defense. He had a great game.
Name drop. What a name drop.
That was the best game of his Husker career. It was if you ever watch that one again, he might have been in on. They caused a turnover that set up the field goal that tied it. They still couldn't score 15 yards out. But I feel like that was a game where Michigan State actually had an advantage that the weather sucked because they were so inept on offense, and Nebraska was actually picking up some steam that year with Adrian. And I think that it was a disadvantage, actually, the elements, but it turned out to be very picturesque at the end with a nice little snow falling on the final series.
Yeah. And then we get to 2021 back in East Lansing, Nebraska football looking to kind of jumpstart the end of its season. They've got a game against a Michigan State team that's off to a fast start. Who was their quarterback? He ended up at Auburn to finish his career, I want to say. But Kenneth Walker was a running back. Mel Tucker was the coach. They were going to take Nebraska to the woodshed was the conversation, because that's how they referred to their home stadium under Mel Tucker, as a woodshed. Connor Happer, very mad about this, still mad about it. Great memories of that game include Nebraska just stuffing Kenneth Walker, who had a monster year that year, but he could not run because Damian Daniels had a monster game. If Antonio Reed's best game was against Michigan State in 2018. I would submit Damian Daniels' best game might have been against Michigan State in 2021. JoJo Doman really good in that game. Nebraska really just shut down Michigan State's offense the entire second half, able to pull ahead, and then they're punting the ball with a touchdown lead in 2013, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I, Brian, are sitting up in the Michigan State press box, which always stands out to me because they split it out. So the Michigan State writers are on one side in their own area. The Nebraska writers are on the other side in their own area. And that ball is kicked. And we're sitting up there. And, famously, the press box sits high, so you get the whole view of the field. We could see with full clarity how Nebraska was going to torment its fan base before it ever happened. Because that ball sailed to an area on the field where absolutely no one in red and white was running. And to this day, I just have that, I distinctly remember just almost like you can feel your jaw sort of fall open because you cannot believe what is happening. And then I don't even remember who the returner was, just races that in for a touchdown. Another one of those famous Nebraska overtime games where they didn't get a first down. I think they lost like 30 yards. And did they have the opportunity to intercept or to get off the field against Michigan State, and they weren't able to do it? And then it ended with an Adrian interception. Maybe they didn't lose yards in that one. Maybe this one just ended with an Adrian interception. The play before, he had a guy wide open for a touchdown and he couldn't hit him.
I feel like Nebraska had the ball first. I'd have to double check that because I think, the Huskers were dispirited and they actually gave up a run in OT then. And I think Michigan State just kicked like a chip shot to win it, if I remember right. But, yeah, that was the game where Husker fans probably swore off Australian punters forever. We'll never do that again, except that now we love it now. But
the win probability for Nebraska before that punt return was 85%.
Man, you would have thought it was higher given the way their defense was playing in that game.
It peaked at 86% in that game, and actually got up to 87. Even after the when it was tied late in the fourth quarter.
Well, they had a little bit of a drive that then stalled out, right? They had the ball, they had the opportunity to win, and then
I don't think Michigan State had a first down in the second half, if I remember.
I think you're correct.
It was one of the more incredible.
Peyton Thorne, is that the quarterback from that game?
Yeah, it was.
All right, look at
that. We've seen some things. We really have. I mean, you lose that game without giving up a first down in the second half. One of the best black shirt performances we've seen. That really was. It was like one of the top. That 21 team was entertaining, and sometimes that defense was great, and that was one of those nights. They were great against Ohio State too, I thought.
Yep.
That year, they lost a close one, but they made Ohio State earn everything in that game.
Yep. Agreed. Let's finish with probably, would this be the worst game in the series? I mean, maybe the 2018 game just because it was 9-6, but the snow and sort of what it meant at the time. Nebraska took on a Michigan State team coached by Harlan Barnett. I have his name pulled up on my tab so I could get this correctly, and I still got it wrong. Harlan Barnett was the interim coach after Mel Tucker got fired. We won't get into why Mel Tucker was fired. That's a different story for a different podcast. But Nebraska gets interim coach.
Wait, we're going to talk about that on another podcast? Why?
Yeah,
we're not going to talk about it then either.
That's when you stay all the way away from.
Yeah, fine. We're not talking about Mel Tucker ever again. So Harlan Barnett is the interim coach. Nebraska coming off of 3 straight wins in October. Matt Rule's first season. They get a Michigan State team that hasn't played particularly good football in a little while. And they have the opportunity to clinch a bowl game right at the beginning of the month. And they lay a giant egg in East Lansing. It was a sleepy, ugly performance. You didn't get a lot of memorable or strong offensive play. it felt like it was sort of the beginning of the end for Heinrich Harburg as a quarterback. And Nebraska still had an opportunity late in that game, but was just unable to really kind of get it done. There was a couple interceptions that were particularly bad. I want to say Michigan State had like this safety that had a monster game, maybe 2 interceptions in it, or at least one. And the sort of loss that kind of set them on the wrong foot for the rest of the month of November in 2023.
Yep, they were 5-3 going in, and you remember they actually had a good October where they were plucky. Like they weren't playing good offense, but they were getting by and winning, 17-9 kind of games. And then it caught up with them. And I think you're right. It was like the point where it's like, man, this offense, you just can't live like this. Like it was 20-10, I think, Michigan State, and then Harburg did get a long run and they got it within 3. They actually got the ball back with one last chance. But it's one of the more, like, there's been disappointing close losses in the Rule era. This was probably one of the more disappointing, like, just bad performances, I would say, in his era as the Husker coach. It was a loss that shouldn't have happened with where Nebraska was and what they had at stake, and they would end up not making a bowl game because of it.
Yep. All right. Well, we don't know what version of Nebraska, Michigan State we're going to get on Saturday. We're going to have the opportunity to talk through that game, talk through some matchups, talk through where Nebraska has the best chance, where they might be a little concerned as they take on Michigan State. When we get into the Husker 24/7 Hypecast later this week, we've got our guest locked in. He's fired up. He picked this game early in the year. Surprised me when he chose this one as the one that he wanted to come on for, but we will see what our guest has to say. We'll see what the entire panel has to say on the Husker 24/7 Hypecast. That'll be later in the week on Thursday morning. You'll be able to find that. Any closing thoughts, anything you guys want to mention that's definitely not connected to Mel Tucker and how he left Michigan State?
I don't think
no, and I don't. No, I don't. Nope, none.
The only thing I'd say is we were talking through this series. For two teams that weren't conference mates until 2011, they really do have an amazing history. Because even before that, you think about Bo Pelini's game as interim coach, where it was the "We Want Bo" chants, where against Michigan State in the Alamo Bowl. The Saban before he Saban being told by Tom Osborne, "Hey, you're not as bad as you think." Like it is really an interesting connection between two squads that you wouldn't think have the history that they do.
Depending on who you talk to, there was quite a brouhaha in the bathroom of the joint media session that featured Nebraska and Michigan State in that Alamo Bowl. There was like a legitimate fight that broke out between Nebraska and Michigan State as two guys were going to the bathroom that featured multiple future NFL players having to come in and break things up. Maybe that we can get on the podcast someday to just really blow this Michigan State Nebraska experience out of the water.
Did someone not give like a buffer space at the urinal or something? I don't know.
I'm trying to think of who was directly involved in that based on what I was told. But yeah, I mean, there was some jawing going on, and then someone took exception to something someone said. Someone got shoved into someone who was trying to relieve their bladder, and then fists started flying. That's
there you go.
The condensed Mike Schaefer version of it. Maybe we'll bring on a guest someday to tell the full version. But yeah, it should be another good one on Saturday. I'm looking forward to it. Nebraska, Michigan State has produced some quality games, both before and after the Huskers have joined the Big Ten Conference. All right, so let's finish up here. We'll remind you all, check out everything we got going on at Husker 24/7. If you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to like and subscribe. If you're watching it or listening to it, I guess rather, on a podcast, feel free to subscribe, get it sent to you daily. You can always check out everything we have going on at Husker247.com. So for Brian Christopherson, Michael Bruntz, I'm Mike Schaefer. We'll catch you next time.